All right, let's go back to Skype. Let's bring in Bryson Vesnaver. He writes for Pro Football Focus, and Pro Football Focus just wrote some articles about the secret superstars on each NFL team. And for the Broncos, it's linebacker Brandon Marshall. Bryson, welcome to the show, and tell me why Brandon Marshall is a secret superstar. Define what you mean by that.
All right, well, each year we do a segment on our PFF website called Secret Superstar, where we pick one player from each team and that hasn't really been well known or hasn't really done much in his career. Usually they're younger guys or sort of journeymen who were practice squad guys, and we base it off mostly the last year. Sometimes we'll go a little further back, and we think that they might end up being a superstar. And so this year we chose Brandon Marshall based on his play of last year.
Were you involved in this process personally? I mean, you were doing it from team to team, or you?
I wrote a couple articles. I didn't. We all sort of pooled in to pick a player, and Brandon Marshall was sort of a unanimous choice for the Broncos for us.
The reason why I'm asking that question, because I want to go to you straight. We feel like there's a problem in Denver because Brandon Marshall had an injury that really restricted him at the end of last season, and then it was discovered that he was required to have additional surgery, and we're concerned of whether or not he's going to be able to play at full strength at the beginning of the season, and B, whether he'll return to the way he was last year. Was that taken into consideration when you were picking him as a, quote, secret superstar?
It was a little bit, but I think we're sort of just basing it off of how they played last year. And before he was injured, he was playing phenomenal. And even when he got back in that playoff game, he didn't play as bad as people thought he had. We ended up grading him positively in that game on limited snaps. Although then there was the offseason surgery as well, and that happened late. So I know he has been saying he'll be back, but that sort of remains to be seen. But we didn't really consider that too much in our process.
Bryson, Brandon Marshall, how good can he be if he's healthy? Is he one of the league's elite linebackers in your estimation?
I think so. Inside, at least. His pass coverage was phenomenal for an inside linebacker. Well, he played outside last year, but this year he'll be moving inside. He was one of the better pass coverage linebackers in the league. And his run game, he really had no weaknesses. His run stopping was very good. He made a ton of stops. And even when he rushed the passer, he was very good. He ended up with, I think, 11 pressures, despite only rushing the passer 43 times, which is a very impressive mark. His run stopping, he had 30 stops, I think. He was top 5 in our signature stats for every category we do, which is run stop, pass rush, pass coverage, and tackling efficiency. He missed 4 tackles last year. That was it.
You're dealing with obviously all the teams in the NFL, but do you remember in the consideration, the discussion of who might have been also under consideration with the Broncos for, quote, superstar status someday?
I can't remember exactly who we considered this year. We mostly just saw Brandon Marshall and said he's the guy because he played so well last year, despite being a 5th-round pick on Jacksonville practice squad, and even last year on Denver practice squad all year.
Bryson, who would be your next pick? You guys go over these teams with a fine-tooth comb. Who would be your next pick on the Broncos roster for superstardom?
That's a good question. I haven't really looked too much into it. Right now, I've sort of been focusing on this, and that was really all I did, so I'm not sure who exactly I would pick.
Can you give me 3 or 4 names of players on other teams that the Broncos, either in their division, give us 3 or 4 names that you thought, boy, this guy is going to be definitely a superstar.
On any team? Yeah,
just we discussed Brandon Marshall. Give me 3 or 4 other Brandon Marshalls around the league.
Put me on the spot here.
I'm sorry.
Good question. I sort of for Detroit. I wrote articles for Detroit and Chicago.
Okay, Detroit and Chicago.
So Detroit, we chose Darius Slay, I believe is who I wrote about, because he was a corner who didn't really do much a couple years ago, and then or the last couple years. Then this year played very well towards the end of the season, especially. And for the Bears, I did Ryan Mundy, the safety, as he was a backup on Pittsburgh for how many years, and then suddenly came to Chicago last year, started, and played very well, all things considered.
Is there a quarterback or running back, a what we would call a skill position? I know that's unfair, but wide receiver, running back, quarterback that we go, oh, wow, you expect him to be a superstar?
Well, I mean, C.J. Anderson, I almost consider already a superstar after how he played last year. that's why we didn't choose him, I think, because he was sort of already came out last year and played amazingly, and everyone sort of considers him the future back of Denver. But he's sort of the guy that came out of nowhere that we think is going to be a great running back.
That's good information.
Bryson, who was your secret superstar for the Broncos last year?
It was Malik Jackson.
That was a good pick.
Not bad.
Yeah, we ended up grading him, I think, at plus 24, so fairly good.
Yeah, if he had gotten more playing time, a lot of people feel he could have been even better, and he's going to get more playing time this year.
Exactly,
You could have almost brought him back this year and went, okay, we were ahead of the curve, but I think he's going to be an exceptional player for the Broncos this year. Why? This is more of a philosophical question, but why create this category, secret superstar? Is there some that you think that maybe 5 years from now you can look back and go, here were our 30 guys and look at the job they've done? Or is it just having fun with trying to pick a player who's an unknown kind of player?
I think it's a bit of both, because it's so hard to predict the future in NFL, right? You never know what could happen. So we're just basing this off how they played and what we think will happen, but really don't exactly know because there's so many things that could happen. But I think it is nice to look back and say, oh yeah, we picked him 2 years ago and look at how he is now. Everyone knows who he is. He's great. Or we say, oh, we picked him and he really didn't pan out. But it's also just a fun thing for people who are following teams that don't know a ton of players to say, hey, watch this guy next year because he's going to be good. And then if he is good, then they remember him, and then it sort of goes from there.
Well, Bryson, really appreciate your time. We call on Pro Football Focus a lot on this show, and you guys do great work. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bryson Vesnaver of Pro Football Focus. And All Out Guests brought to you by Papa John's, the official sponsor of the Colorado Rockies. The day after every Rockies win, you get 50% off your regular menu price online order at papajohns.com. You have to use the promo code ROCKSWIN.